In the world of post-Brexit Britain, there are, I would assume, only about three things that people can really agree on. Kirsty Young was certainly the greatest host ever of Desert Island Discs. The creator of the Terry's Chocolate Orange should be knighted, and Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, does deserve to be left on some remote Scottish outcrop with only sheep for company. But actually, when I think about it, no, don't let him near any sheep. But that is not where Prince Andrew has been. Where do you think you could have found the 63-year-old unemployed at a permanent loose-end Duke over the weekend? Rewatching 24 and scooping his way through a pint of ice cream? Writing in his gratitude journal, maybe? Or shouting at squirrels in the garden and wondering where in the world Fergie could be? Oh, no, no, no. He was right behind his brother King Charles, enjoying a return to the royal spotlight. Last Sunday, 3 generations of the royal family piled into the pews of St. George's Chapel at Windsor for the first Easter service with His Majesty in the top job. That day also just so happened to be the 2nd anniversary of the death of Prince Philip and also the 18th wedding anniversary of Charles and Camilla. Now, it should have been a PR slam dunk. It should have made the courtiers absolutely thrilled. The image of a united House of Windsor getting together in a show of support for the new monarch. But instead, we saw Andrew making his way down the hill towards the chapel. He is certainly the black sheep of the royal family. And I cannot understand why in the world the king allowed his brother to be there on Sunday. Why did he agree to Andrew not only being seen, but also photographed? This was a really important day in the reign of King Charles III. Not only did he assume the throne, the keys to the Tower of London, all the sturgeon and dolphins in the UK territorial waters, and also the armed services when he acceded the throne last September, but he also became the official head of the Church of England. And as any good Christian knows, there is no day that is holier than Easter Sunday. On Sunday, Charles was supposed to be busy at work. He was not supposed to be giving in to his brother's desires. Now, maybe His Majesty occasionally comes across as a slightly ineffectual placeholder of a sovereign, but still, at the end of the day, he takes his job very seriously. So why in the world did he allow Andrew to be such a visible part of this important moment? For Charles, including Andrew on Sunday represents a very risky move indeed. There is a certain depressing kind of deja vu to all of this. For much of the last couple of years of the Queen's life, Andrew represented a real blind spot. She loved her second son, and that seemed to regularly trump her sense of duty. For instance, somehow in March of last year, Andrew managed to somehow convince his mother to allow him to escort her to her seat inside Westminster Abbey for Prince Philip's memorial service. To say the world was shocked to see Andrew and his mother entering together is quite the understatement. It certainly was not the late Queen's best moment, but it had mostly been assumed that with the passing of the Duke's #1 champion and last remaining dues-payer member of the official Prince Andrew fan club, that he was about to be facing some much harsher winds. And then in December, Andrew was a surprise inclusion at the annual Royal Christmas service at Sandringham, but at least he was kept pretty far away from the King and William and Catherine too, and their kids, including the future King Prince George. And this arrangement seemed acceptable. Andrew was reduced to a blurry blob in the background at family events. That's what we assumed would be the status quo. And then we learned that Charles was planning to cut his brother's almost $500,000 tax-free allowance, and so we assumed that Charles's anger at his witless egomaniac of a brother was finally coming into full effect. Well, it was embarrassing enough for Andrew, but even more so when it became obvious this would also mean that he couldn't afford the upkeep of his giant Grace and Favor home Royal Lodge anymore. So goodbye to the 30 rooms, goodbye swimming pool, and goodbye to the estate so big that it's got its own chapel. Instead, Charles offered him Harry and Meghan's former home, the 5-bedroom Frogmore Cottage, where he's going to have a difficult time unplugging all the leftover oil diffusers and throwing away all the post-it note affirmations stuck to every single mirror. Now, at last glance, reportedly, Andrew has been digging in his heels, but he doesn't really have any cards left to play. When the news about the Royal Lodge came out, it seemed like finally, after decades of getting away with a lot, of reportedly spending time in Saint-Tropez with a gun runner who introduced him to the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, visiting countries on human rights watch lists, and enjoying a New York City break with a convicted sex offender, finally Andrew was going to face some consequences. But here we find ourselves today. We've got photos of him strolling in the spring sunshine just a few meters behind his brother the king, less than a month before the king's coronation. Now, okay, if we want to try to be sympathetic here, maybe we could assume that Charles, in the spirit of Christian forgiveness, decided to allow his brother back into the fold. Or perhaps, after that humiliating news about the royal lodge, the king decided to consider Sunday a family event instead of an official outing. But this is one of those moments when His Majesty should really be making decisions, not as an emotional type who talks to trees and underlines passages in his autographed copy of the Dalai Lama's The Art of Happiness, but instead, he needs to try to be the man whose responsibility it is to make sure that the monarchy survives. I mean, for all of Harry and Meghan's tantrum throwing on TV, for all of their foot stomping and book whining, the damage their outbursts have done to the monarchy can never begin to match the harm that Andrew and his friendship with that convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has done to the crown. Charles has got to be careful not to appear to be softening his stance on his brother if he expects his grandson to one day inherit the throne and not just end up starring on I'm a Celebrity. Now, I am a huge fan of the late Queen, but often when it came to the question of Andrew, the late Queen really struggled with those warring parts of herself, the dueling halves of mother and monarch. Now, clearly, the Duke is still a part of the family, but still, Charles's job as king is to protect and safeguard a 1,000-year-old institution. It's not his job to give in to occasional bounce of affection or guilt like his mother seemed to do in the past. It is worth mentioning that in the photos from Sunday's royal family procession to the chapel, William and Catherine and their three kids trailed about as far behind Andrew at the back of the royal pack as was possible. So reportedly, William, along with Charles, pressured the late Queen to change strategy and to not allow Andrew to participate in the Order of the Garter ceremony. That's one of those occasions that are filled with significance and pomp. And anyway, in spite of the fact that he lost his honorary military titles and the ability to use his HRH, Andrew is still a Knight of the Garter. That is the oldest and most prestigious chivalric order. So on that occasion, while Charles and some new inductees to the Garter, including Camilla and former Prime Minister Tony Blair, were walking about wearing some velvet caps with giant feathers, looking like they were having an excellent time, Andrew had to stay at home and reorganize his putter collection maybe? So perhaps it is time for William to put some pressure on his father a little bit and make him see some sense. Charles should not have allowed Andrew to appear in the very heart of the royal family at a moment when the palace is busy trying to convince us that they are unified and they are robust. There cannot be a way back to anything even almost resembling public life for Andrew. And maybe if Charles needs some inspiration, he can look to the other Elizabeth's famous speech to the troops at Tilbury back in 1588, as England was preparing to fend off a Spanish invasion. She declared, "I have the heart and stomach of a king." And that is precisely what Charles needs right now. He needs to remember that his job demands that he's got the fortitude and the gumption and the strength of a king. You know what? Maybe he could write it on a few post-it notes as well.